Hi, welcome to Illustrated Beards, Episode 3, brought to you by The Fantasy Shop, best in comics and games since 1981. I am Nate.
I am Jason.
And we're going to review some comics.
That was a very proper introduction.
So, this was a pretty good week. There was a lot of interesting things on the shelf.
Indeed.
And I had a little bit of trouble deciding what to pick this week, but I decided I'm going to go with Garth Ennis's Red Team, which is the first book I've read off Dynamite. It's the only one I'm reading right now. Not to say anything bad about Dynamite.
Got some excellent stuff.
They do.
Yeah.
It's just, this is the one that has really caught my eye. Started up maybe a month after The Boys ended, I think.
Yeah. About right.
But it's Garth Ennis and Craig Cermak. And it's a police crime drama. It's a really... I mean, it's... Garth Ennis has a name for himself and for what he does in comics.
Ridiculous violence?
Yeah, this book's not that, though. This book is Garth Ennis at, in what, in my opinion, is his best. Like, when I think of Garth Ennis at his, in my opinion, like, Garth Ennis at that, like, his extreme violence, like, just ridiculous, I think of, like, Crossed. When I think of, like, why I love Garth Ennis as a writer, I think of things like Dangerous Habits. It's a gritty story that definitely, and Punisher Max, for that matter. It's definitely violent. It's, even if it's not physical violence, the dialogue is often really violent.
Right, yeah.
But this is a book.
Boys.
This book is about an elite police, like, major case squad that one day decide they're going to become a hit squad because there is a particular suspect who they have been after for 2 years. They know without any shadow of a doubt he's committed heinous acts of violence and heinous crimes, and they also know beyond a shadow of doubt that there is no way this guy will see justice. So they decide that if anyone is equipped to know how to get away with a murder, it's them, and that they're going to do it. And the whole first issue, this is issue 2, the whole first issue plays kind of as a flashback. It's an unseen police investigator questioning one of the members of Red Team. So it's clear that at this point they've been caught and they're retelling the story. And what hooked me on the book, aside from the fact that it is very realistic, Garth Ennis has always... I've always felt that Garth Ennis does... Darth Ennis. I've always felt Garth Ennis does a lot of research.
Garth.
Yes. I've always gotten the feeling he does a lot of research into the procedures of whatever he's writing about, and this is definitely... This book feels like he looked into police procedure.
Yeah, he definitely goes into great detail. I've only read issue 1. I've not read issue 2 yet. But yeah, it's definitely written from the perspective of someone who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, and that's how Battlefields is when he writes
Absolutely.
World War II stuff. That guy really knows.
I think he actually has a military advisor for that book.
He probably does, but I know that in his personal life he is a, like, hardcore military hobbyist.
Gotcha.
And it shows through in a lot of his stuff. But
yeah.
But anyway, this is a good book. The first issue is great. It goes through their first hit. And what hooked me on the book is that throughout the issue, during the questioning, he keeps saying, everything went as bad as it could have possibly gone. And after he's done explaining the first hit to the investigator, it's clear that the hit went completely fine. So the investigator asks, what is it that went wrong? You said the worst thing possible happened. And he says, well, it went fine. That was the worst thing, because at that point I knew we were going to do it again. And that was the last page, and I was like, okay, yeah. I'm on for the long count. Like, so it's just kind of a story of these people who, like, have dedicated themselves to the justice system, and then after years and years of being in, like, the front lines of violent crime investigation and things like that, have become disillusioned and decided that if they really want to bring justice and change to their community, they have to go outside the law. And it's interesting. It's a good book. I mean, they're definitely not... I guess I can't say definitely. To me, they're not heroes. The main characters are not heroes to me. Some people might read it and think that they are.
All of Garth Ennis' characters tend to be anti-heroes in the way they're presented. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good book. The art is good. There's a lot of... One thing I noticed, and I don't think you'll be able to see it, but the shading gives a really... There's just a lot of good light play in the art, and it helps give the book this feeling of it's a crime drama. But yeah, I highly recommend this book. If you're a fan of Garth Ennis, if you're a fan of grit and realistic and dark storytelling, I highly recommend this book.
NYPD Blue, Law and Order, these kinds of things, they got nothing on this book.
I've heard it compared to The Shield. I've not watched The Shield, but if The Shield's anything like this book, I'm 2 issues in and now I want to watch The Shield. So yeah, I mean, it's something I highly recommend.
For sure.
So yeah, check it out. Red Team, issue 2, on Dynamite by Garth Ennis.
Right on. My comic review is Guardians of the Galaxy #1. A couple of weeks ago, let's say 2 or 3 weeks ago, we got a
The awesome .1.
0.1 issue of this book, which was essentially just a flashback. It was Peter Quill telling a story to Tony Stark about his childhood and how he grew up.
Yep.
And
if you picked up the Marvel Now .1 special, the first couple pages of that Guardians .1 were in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it brought that to a close. It was awesome.
Right. It was really cool. But we hit the ground running with #1 and go right into a story of Earth being cut off from the rest of the galaxy, which is an interesting thing to think about because of when you read the Marvel Universe, how many alien species visit frequently to Earth, or even live on Earth.
I don't read X-Men, but I know doesn't the Institute have some sort of treaty right now or some sort of trade agreement with the Shi'ar? Or?
There is a loose treaty between some of the species that deal with the X-Men's world specifically. But Guardians of the Galaxy tells the story of Peter Quill. He is the Star-Lord of his father's home planet, which means he is essentially a prince in their royal family. And in true kind of, I want to compare it to Han Solo. In kind of true fashion, he just rejects everything that he could have and just finds his own path. And along the way meets some other characters and forms a team to protect the universe. If you've read Guardians of the Galaxy, if you're familiar with these characters, you'll recognize them all right away. The team that they're using for this book, with the exception of Iron Man, because he's kind of going to be popping in for the first arc, I think.
And it's awesome.
It is awesome. He's got a new space armor that he's flying around in, so that's really cool. But you'll recognize Drax, Gamora, Groot, and Rocket Raccoon. It's a little too peculiar to me that they chose this team because they're about to use these characters in the movie. So it seems a little too.
One thing I've noticed though is there is clearly there's clearly an intentional thing going on with the Marvel creative editing teams who, I've noticed after the first wave of Marvel movies, some things changed drastically, and with Marvel Now there were some things that came a little closer to the movies. And to be honest, most of it I don't have a problem with. But I don't think that it's suspicious. I think you're dead on.
It just seems a little too convenient to use the characters. But yeah, it is probably why they are making this choice. Obviously, the guys that are working on comics are collaborating with the guys that are doing movies. In any case, if you've never read Guardians of the Galaxy, it's a good chance to get to know some of these characters that you're going to be seeing in a movie come next year. But it's aside from all that, it's actually a really fantastic book. Star-Lord has a confrontation with his father. Many of you who know who Peter Quill is might be asking yourselves, isn't he dead? Didn't he go to the Cancerverse and die?
Well, they touch on that.
They do. There is a single line of dialogue that, fixes the problem. And that's really all I wanted out of it, was just that it was mentioned that this actually did happen.
That it wasn't just a reboot.
Right. It's not something we're ignoring.
Marvel has been very good about that, too, with Marvel Now, of making it clear, this isn't a reboot, and we're not ignoring old continuity.
Right.
Anything that might be a problem, we're at least going to try to touch on it, and they've done a good job.
Exactly. So yeah, it's a fantastic issue. It ends with what I can only assume, because they did, they don't really, what I can only assume is, you can see that the Guardians are near Earth. I'm not really sure what is going on in this panel. Obviously they're in London, there's Big Ben. So, I'm not really sure what's going on in this panel. The people are running away. Clearly, they're attacking London. So it kind of
who's attacking?
Right. It's all tied into.
Man, yeah, it's good.
It's all tied into Peter Quill's father telling him that Earth has been cut off. Now, there's obviously a very specific reason why Earth has been cut off, some kind of plan that maybe this Galactic Council has for Earth. We won't know that until we read further in. But #1 came out this week. A fantastic read. I highly recommend it. We still have copies of the Zero.
One thing I gotta say, I don't know if I'm wrong in hoping for this, but I've also been reading New Avengers, and it's kind of like I'm so new to the Cape world, but with New Avengers and with Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm starting to see like books that kind of touch on the bigger picture of the Marvel Universe.
Absolutely.
And I would love to see New Avengers in this.
Well, it is one of the things they talked about during the relaunch is trying to make it all feel like a cohesive universe. So bringing in these universal things and having them interact directly with what's happening on Earth with the Avengers and the X-Men is a big way to do that. And it seems like that's what they're trying to achieve. And I applaud them for that. It's been really fun. It's been great. But Guardians of the Galaxy from Marvel, #1, check it out. It's in my store right now. It's good. It is good.
So yeah, we're going a lot faster this time.
We're trying. We've heard some of you guys' feedback. We're trying to shorten things up. So what we did is we cut down, and we're just going to review one comic each, and then a comic that we both agree on is something you should check out, and then the trades.
And this comic we both agree on was a really good one. We both have, I think we both have similar feelings all around on it.
It's Age of Ultron #3. If you've not been paying attention, this is Marvel's new big crossover thing. It's not really like their typical crossovers because they're not tying every single book on their shelf into it. There is a select few books that are directly tying into what's going on in the story, and a couple of them came out this week. They were actually pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic Four.
What's even more interesting is there was a Fantastic Four. It was number 5, right? Yeah, it was Fantastic Four #5 and Superior Spider-Man 6. And as far as I know, those both already came out.
5 of Fantastic Four has. 6 of Superior Spider-Man has not yet.
Are you sure?
I think so.
I think it has. Either way, there will be.
Yeah.
Basically, what came out was Fantastic Four 5 AU and Superior Spider-Man 6 AU. Now there will be a Fantastic Four 5 or is Superior Spider-Man 6 that are non-AU. So these are. It's kind of like it's both for the fans of Superior Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, but it's also for those people who are not normally reading those books and are just reading Age of Ultron, so you can get a taste of what these characters are doing.
Right, how it's affecting their lives directly. Yeah. But this was a fantastic read.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, what we've come into is Ultron has taken over. Like one day, it's best told through the eyes of Spider-Man in the first couple issues, and in the Superior Spider-Man tie-in, Spider-Man came home after a long day of fighting crime and just passed out from exhaustion, and when he woke up, this was the world. And there's a fantastic story told in Age of Ultron #2 about what Peter experienced during that time. They kind of flesh a little more out of that in Superior Spider-Man 6 AU. So yeah, he seems like he's the guy who's remembering everything first.
Yeah.
Like he's starting to get these flashes and these memories back of what's going on. But this one goes into a plan that Captain America has come up with to infiltrate and maybe have one of his own people get close to Ultron. And the person chosen is Luke Cage. And the bait chosen is She-Hulk, which I thought was kind of an interesting interesting way to do it. Like, it's a Hulk. You know, like that appeals to Ultron for some reason. But that is something they've established, is that these dudes in the ruins of New York are trading superheroes for immunity to Ultron's destruction.
And they've established that there are 7,000 heroes in New York. We've seen one other city. I won't go into details on that.
Sure.
What's interesting is so far this crossover is awesome. This is my first crossover, like my first event with either publisher. My only criticism so far is it is hard to see at this juncture where this is in the continuity, like where this is really happening and when this is happening.
Right.
And I hope that they clear that up, and I kind of have a feeling that it'll be a little more clear once this is coming to a close. But this issue, if you have not been reading Age of Ultron, maybe on issue 1 and 2 I would have just said I like this, it's good, give it a shot if you want. On issue 3, when I hit that last page, I'm now at the point where I implore you to pick up this book.
It definitely became a must-read after this issue. It jumped to a conclusion that nobody could have seen coming. And if they told you they saw it coming, they lied to you.
Yeah, they were lying. it's funny because without going into details, all I will say is I had asked myself in issue 2, I wonder where he is.
Yes.
And then I forgot about it. And if you've read this, you'll know what I'm talking about. And then I got to the last page, and I probably made an audible noise. Like I was probably like, ah!
I definitely did. I was looking at it when we got the books in the previous Tuesday to put them out for Wednesday. I was flipping through it, and myself and John were in here. And I got to that last page, and I squealed like I was a little girl.
It's
It is definitely, it's definitely something to check out.
But it's interesting because, and this is both a positive and a negative for a lot of people who are reading it, is it doesn't really tell you how this happened. All you know, and all the heroes seem to know, is that all of the sudden, pretty much all of the cities, as far as they're aware, they know for sure New York, and they've said they know for sure Washington, D.C. are gone and replaced with, like, Ultron buildings and stuff.
AI buildings, mechanical buildings.
And it's kind of interesting. It's very much like, what if Ultron just came back one day and while everyone is asleep, he took over?
And that's an interesting thing to say because Marvel has made a name for themselves doing what if stories. Yeah. This I think though is going to fit somewhere in the continuity once it's all
they
said and
specifically said in the promos for this that this is not a what if story. Like this is happening in the continuity.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know. I guess everything that's on the shelf that is in Age of Ultron is either before it or immediately after it.
Yeah, I would think
knows,
like
man?
wherever they decide this fits, everything that you've been reading from Marvel will be with a tagline of this takes place after these events or this takes place before these events. It doesn't even matter. One thing we know from this issue is that something has happened in this issue that we just didn't expect. It changes our view of what this event is.
Exactly. Yeah. Everything that we thought we had figured out by issue 2 about what had happened is turned on its head, and it's clear that something else entirely is happening. And I am very, very interested to see where this is going to go.
This is only
interested
book 3.
to see the conclusion. Yeah. So
we got 10 issues of this to go. There's some more tie-ins coming.
Yep.
Check it out, man. It's on the shelf. It's definitely a good read. Age of Ultron, number 3 from Marvel.
it's good.
Absolutely.
And you get a chrome cover with the first issue. That's cool. It's the 90s.
You know, we actually are sold out of those chrome covers.
Oh, bummer.
I don't know if they have any plans. Obviously, I know they have plans to reprint it. I don't know if they have plans to reprint any chrome covers, but it was cool.
It was cool.
It's a nice little throwback.
It was really dry weather, and I kept getting static shocked on the cover every time I had to pick one up.
Right.
Let's move on to trades.
Yeah, absolutely. Start us up.
All right, yeah. I'm not doing a new trade this week. There actually just wasn't, unfortunately, anything on the shelf I had read, which I hate to say, but I'm behind on a lot of stuff. So I'm choosing The Cape this week. It's a quick read. It's by Joe Hill. It is totally standalone unless you take the prequel, which recently came out, which is Cape 1968.
Yeah.
I have not finished that yet. I've got it in single issue, waiting to be read. But this book is excellent. Not sure who does the art on it, but I need to find out because the art is really, really, really good.
Joe Hill is a guy who does Lock and Key. Any of you guys out there have read Lock and Key? He's Stephen King's son. He's a fabulous writer.
Yeah, he is really, really good. So the art and colors, art is by Zach Howard. Colors are by Nelson Daniel. Letters by Sean Lee and Robbie Robbins. It says it was written by Jason Ciaramella, based on the short story The Cape by Joe Hill. This book is really good.
It's fantastic.
I really didn't know 100% what I was getting into with this, but it starts out with this little boy, and he's got a baby blanket that, as he grew too old to have a baby blanket, his mother changed it a little bit. She like sewed it up a little bit and made it a cape for him to play around in, and sewed a red lightning bolt on it, and sewed his father's I think it was like Special Forces patch from Vietnam, and his father was MIA in Vietnam, so. It's him kind of like flashing back to a memory of falling out of a tree, and he's like mortally wounded and falling out of this tree while wearing the cape. But he insists that he does heal from the mortal wound, but he insists that he was able to fly for a moment. And it just kind of fast forwards, kind of fast forwards in his life, and you kind of see him as he grows up into like teenage years and into adulthood, and just kind of is a burnout. Kind of a failure, and he's just playing video games all the time, and like, you know, the classic stereotype, but clearly kind of a pained soul. And it goes into, he thinks this cape was destroyed at a certain point in his childhood, and he finds the cape, and puts it on and is able to fly. And from there it goes into, I mean, it's only a couple issues. Like, I read this in maybe an hour in one sitting. Maybe
yeah, it's
an
a
hour.
quick read, it really is.
But it is excellent, and it goes from him at the point where he finds the cape and realizes he is able to fly with it, without explanation. I believe they explained that in the Cape 1968. We find that it becomes a story about, like, good and evil, and whether or not those are things that someone are, or if it's like, I mean, what is it, Bedlam, or Colder says, like, is
Bedlam
evil,
does, yeah.
Is evil something you are or something you do? This book is very much the same kind of question. It's
what would you do if you could suddenly fly?
Yeah, I mean,
would you change the world?
It's a perspective on, like, this guy's probably not an evil person, but it's life events and his perspective on his life events that have led him to do the things he does once he has power. And it's a brutal book. I mean, there was a moment where my jaw dropped, and it's kind of, I mean, I read a lot of Garth Ennis type stuff. It's hard to do that to me. But there were page turns I didn't see coming in here. It's a deep story, and I highly recommend it. Quick read. Joe Hill's The Cape. Excellent art. Excellent story.
For sure, check it out. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Right on. My trade just came out this week. It is all new X-Men hardcover, volume 1. It's called
fast.
Yesterday's X-Men.
Does that not feel really fast?
It was really fast. They're definitely hitting the gas on everything Marvel now because the issues have gone reprint after reprint, and you still can't find them. So yeah, they're really trying to get people into this.
Some of them have been bi-monthly, like 1 month and then not the next. And then the schedules with Marvel have been bizarre. They are pumping the books out.
Pumping it out, yeah, for sure. But this all new X-Men, for those of you who are not familiar, Beast has gone back in time and brought the original 5 X-Men forward into the time stream to kind of confront Cyclops with this person he's become in the wake of Avengers vs. X-Men, him being an outlaw, him being arrested. All these things are changing for him, and they think he's going to start a war. So this is Beast's big idea, is to get the 5 original X-Men. And like most of you out there, when I heard this is what they were going to do, excuse me, I was very, very skeptical. I thought to myself, that sounds very gimmicky. It's just silly. It's a way to get Jean Grey back into the world. It's a way for us to throw this blast from the past into the world, and it just doesn't seem like it's going to make sense. But it has actually turned out to be one of the greater X books sitting on the shelf. It's a phenomenal read. Seeing how young Cyclops reacts when he realizes what this world has become and what he has done. Seeing what happens to Jean as she realizes that she doesn't exist anymore, and all of the events that led her to not exist. Yeah.
Oh, man.
It is done very, very well.
I've been putting off reading X books, and I talked about this in the last video. I've been putting off reading X books because there's so much there, and I know that it won't stop with me reading the current X books, and there's a lot of current X books.
There are.
So yeah. I know what will happen is I'll start reading them, and I'll get really into it, and then I'll have to go back and read all of them, which I recommend you do. But I've got a lot of stuff in my
working
in
a comic store.
Right now,
it definitely takes its toll.
But as I said, Brian Wood's going to be writing X-Men, and it's all downhill from there.
Yep.
So I'm glad that this hardcover is already out, because as soon as I do get into that stuff, I'm glad that it's out as soon as it is, because I've heard excellent things.
But yeah, it goes through the first 5 issues of...
It's a wrap cover, too. That's great.
Brian Michael Bendis and Stuart Immonen doing art, and anybody who's familiar with Stuart Immonen knows he's amazing. He really does some cool things with any character that he draws, most particularly the X-Men. I love the way he draws Magneto. I love the way he draws the original 5 X-Men. It has a very classic feel. He makes sure that they look the way they should.
It looks like that.
They make sure he does do a very good job of making sure that, you know, he's obviously taking his cues from the old art from back in the day. So, yeah, it's you know, young X-Men coming forward into the past, confronting their future selves about these things. It's a fantastic read. This hardcover is beautiful. It contains issues 1 through 5. It's $25, which is pretty much what you would pay to get the 5 single issues anyway, which are very hard to track down at this point. Yep. So
extremely, yeah.
I've got a couple of them on my shelf. I pulled the wrap off of this one so that I could actually open it up and examine it and look at it, and that you guys out there could as well. So come in, check it out if you've been putting off reading it, but you've heard people talking about it. They're not lying to you. It is a fantastic book. So yeah, try it out for sure.
Right on.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our...
It does.
The end of our 3rd episode here.
We seem to have cut the time in half this time, so...
Yeah. We are really, really happy with all you guys' feedback. Please continue to do
thank
so.
you.
Because we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants, just going with this and just doing it every week.
Sorry, the last video took so long.
Yes.
I kind of put it off in the midst of Wizard World, and that's the only excuse I'm gonna give.
Yeah, you guys know Wizard World was here. It was a hectic weekend for all of us. All of us tried to go and have a good time. It was fun. Positive note, they're coming back next year, so awesome.
And it was
we
fun.
definitely made an
If
impression.
If you didn't go this year, I would recommend going next year. It was definitely not a straight up comic convention. It was like comics and pop culture.
It was a small version of what they have achieved for years with what they do in San Diego.
Yeah.
The San Diego Con is so much more than a Comic Con. It is movies and television, celebrities, and it's so much more than it ever was.
The bazaar was amazing, though. I got to be honest. Say what you will about like a giant area where people are just peddling goods to you, but that was awesome.
It was.
I saw some incredible merchandise.
There were some cool writers. There were some really good merch booths. Yeah, it was amazing.
Local guys were there. Cullen Bunn and Matt Kint. They were awesome.
Yeah, Colin Bryan was there as well.
Yep.
Yeah, just some of the guys that have done some fantastic things over the years.
It was good stuff.
Hopefully, the bigger it gets, maybe we'll attract some attention and get some of the guys that we all talk about every week. Brian Bendis or Scott Snyder. These guys that we love. Colin Bryan, Matt Kint. They're awesome guys. They're local guys. We always are pushing their stuff in here. You know that if you come in here, we can't stop speaking highly enough about things like Six Gun and Helheim. I loved Frankenstein when Matt Kint took over.
Issue 2 of Helheim is going to be awesome.
Yeah, Helheim issue 1 was good. Maybe in the future we'll talk about that.
Indeed.
But
I think that brings us to a close. So thanks for watching Illustrated Beards.
We'll see you next week.
Have a good one.